So we are hopping into a tutorial. This is actually a re-record, so don't pay attention to what's on the screen. That's actually from my laptop, but I re-recorded this because I thought this was some good content to do a tutorial on. So basically what we're gonna do is a ball taper here. And with this ball taper, we're gonna really exaggerate the blend, make sure it's thoroughly stretched out and smoothly blended out. All right, so as you already saw, I already start combing the hair out, making sure my area that I'm gonna blend is completely smoothed out. But I'm gonna first hop in with the trimmer. And as you're gonna notice, I'm not putting a regular guideline in here. I'm putting like a nice arch on it. I'm talking about McDonald's type arch. I'm gonna make sure that I use this arch to start my fade and see how I want to blend up from here, because I want to really stretch this fade out to the max without making it look like the side is separated from the top of the hair. And at this point, really, I'm just cleaning up. You don't have to every single time. Sometimes if I'm in a rush, I just make sure it's balded out, but I don't make sure the line is completely perfect. But for education purposes, you can definitely make sure it's perfect. So in this clip, you're gonna see I had already went in with my clipper all the way open, and I started to go open, halfway close, open, halfway close, basically just blending out the bottom part of that phase. And then anything that's not gonna get faded out with the clipper, I go back in with the trimmer and just make sure I use the corner of the trimmer to knock out any of that bottom line that's still gonna be in there, and it's not gonna be you know what I'm saying, bulky within our fade, or we don't want no little faint line in there. We want to make sure we go ahead and get that line out in the bottom before we work our way up. And most beginners would, when they get to this point, they probably freak out thinking they may go up too high, but you'll see how I attack it in the next clip when we go on with this 1.5. So you see I'm gonna take this 1.5 guard and go in wide open. All I'm doing here is debulking and starting to clear my workspace. Another thing that I do with this is it's a way for me to basically use that stretch blend at the bottom and then start to connect and make sure it starts to meet in the middle. And what I mean by that is you'll see me start to clear out this area with this 1.5 guard and make sure I have some transition from the top to the sides of the fade to make sure that it's starting to blend together. And also this alleviates me from having to go too high, because all I'm doing is clearing out the workspace and making sure I'm staying below the workspace that I already cleared out. Next, I'm gonna hop in with the 1 guard wide open again, and all I'm doing is really removing hair and debulking, not really fading. I'm just making sure that I'm still smoothing and clearing out my workspace at this point. And all I'm doing here is going open and close, knocking out any dark spots I see between that 1 and the 1.5, and just making sure I'm starting to get a fluent fade in between the phases. And like I said, I'm staying below that 1.5 where I cleared out the workspace and making it easy on myself, making sure I don't stretch the blend too high to make the fade look a little bit, you know, like giving it that mushroom top. We don't want that look. We want a smooth, even transition to where it's just fluent and it's just butter. And immediately after this, I'm gonna go ahead and really start fading and detailing at this point. Like I said, most of that part right there was just a lot of debulking, honestly. But this is where I feel like the magic happens, where you start to bring where you're blending up and where you're blending down together, and it just meets and it starts to give you that transition. You actually start to see where the fade is gonna come together with its half guard. And here I do the same thing that I did with the no guard. I go open, halfway close, open, halfway close, and just really spot reducing anytime I see any dark spots. Is not going into the fade and making it a smooth transition. Understand, every cut is not going to be a one size fit all thing. You kind of got to play around that lever. That's what the lever is there for. And you just work that fade out. And this is where, like I said, this is where the magic is happening right now, where we getting everything to start to blend together and it's starting to come all together perfectly. And at this point, we done ran our guard system. We done used the guards that we gonna use to get what we gonna get. But now this is the time where you bring in the finesse. This is the time where we just flat out detail. We just take the guards off and we only using the blade. We using angles and corners at this point on. And this is where that barber eye comes in. This is where the repetition, the eye for studying work just comes all together, because at this point you done ran the guard system. You done ran that part out. All you got to do now is use your barber eye and make sure that you start to spot reduce. Anything that's not in the fade, it gotta go. Anything that's not supposed to be in that smooth transition, it gotta go. And all you do right here is just spot reduce with the corner of your clipper. And as you see, man, I'm really just working this fade out, using the last two teeth on the blade, man, and just making this thing work. Man, at this point, man, I had to bring y'all in closer, man, just so y'all could see how the magic is happening here. See how the thing is just coming together up close and personal. Like I said, man, really at this point, I'm really just detailing. I'm using the corner of the clipper and just finessing the whole situation. And it's going to come together so dope. So now we're going to go ahead and hop in on the back part of the taper. A lot of people will leave that little ridge right behind the occipital bone bulky. Not me. I like to kind of smooth that thing out to give me that nice gradual transition. All I'm doing here is just taking, I believe it's a 2 guard, and just knocking down. You can use a 2 or the 1.5 if you're comfortable with that as well, depending on the length of the hair. But literally, we're going to go ahead and do the exact same thing in the back that we would do on the sides. I'm going right back in with that trimmer. You know what I'm saying? Making me another nice and high McDonald's arch. You know what I'm saying? I go from one side and I come back on the other side. Like I said, this does not have to be perfect. This is only for educational purposes, especially if I'm moving fast. It's not going to be exactly perfect. It's not going to be the most perfect arch. But what happens is you do switch it up within your blend once you start to really put the fade in if it isn't perfect. So with this, like you saw on the side, I'm actually gonna go here, open, no guard, and basically we're just gonna take this line out and first phase out, going open, halfway close, open, halfway close. Just think of that system in your head repeatedly to get that bottom line out, because that's gonna be the foundation to your blend and transition. And one thing I noticed with this area, with his specific occipital bone, I really didn't want to run the guard system. I would rather just freestyle it and use my clip over comb method, which I can tag in the description. And honestly, I just got that bulk up out of there. Where I saw that hair was jammed up, I feel like my guards wasn't going to catch it the way I wanted to. So I just went ahead and freestyled it. And you'll be able to definitely pick up on that when you become more advanced when it comes to blending with clip over comb. So as you see, I already did the other side too. You do the exact same thing to one side as you do to the other. It's just like solving, you know what I'm saying, a problem with fractions. Whatever you do on one side, you gotta do to the other side and make it match. So what I'm doing here is, I know I'm doing a completely natural lineup, and what I love to do with a natural lineup is prep it as much as possible. So what you see me doing here is debulking and raking out any curls. All I did was flip my clipper over, and I'm only using the tip of the teeth and just making sure I rake out as much hair as possible that looks natural and makes it look clean, so I have the most amount of hair and space to work with before I line this thing up and make sure I can grasp the most natural lineup as possible. Another thing that I personally like to do is, before I line it up, I do like to go ahead and style the top with however I'm going to do it. Even if I got to hit it with the shears or knock it down later, I like to go ahead and style the top. So what you see me doing here is using a mix of foam and a gel pomade to give it a little bit more curl, and all I do is go in with a towel and just sponge it up versus using a traditional sponge, because personally I feel like you can't clean a sponge as much as you would like to, or as good as possible. So I like to use a towel that's pretty fresh, clean, you know what I'm saying, fresh out the washer, and I use that to sponge up the hair, but the product gives it that curl ultimately. So I'm back on the lineup again at this point, and what I'm doing here is just brushing down the hairline again, making sure I get it completely laid down as much as possible. You can never prep a lineup too much, especially when you're trying to keep it natural and keep it out as far as possible. One thing you will notice here, if I can get my damn shoulder out of the way in this clip, but one thing you will notice here is that as I do this lineup, my client does have a side that is a little bit lighter than the other side, and he knows this. But with properly adjusted trimmers and actually prepping the lineup, we can actually catch this line good without having to even push it back, and we'll just go straight across with the lineup. And you'll see how once we put a defined line on it, it actually hides that low area. It makes it look like the spot is not even there, because we thoroughly prepped the lineup. And there's several ways you can prep a lineup, especially, you know, like using some type of alcohol to dry the skin out. I actually shampooed him before we even started, and all of that comes into play now when I'm putting my properly adjusted trimmers on that lineup, and I'm just getting a nice sharp line on it. Like I said, I ain't pushing it back because I already prepped it to be out, and I'm just making sure I'm catching the most full point, and all I'm doing is going straight across and making sure everything still is natural, and not push back at all. And like I said, even though there was a light spot right there, some properly adjusted trimmers and a well prepared lineup can still catch that line to where it disguises it pretty damn good, if I must say so myself. So here I'm making sure I get a sharp line on the back of the neck, the same way I, treat it just like you do on the front, because a lot of people skip this part. Make sure you get a nice arch around the ear, and make sure the same way you prep the front, the same way you prep the back, keeping it super natural, and just get it super crispy as much as possible without going too crazy with it. And also, when you putting these lines on, that's helping you to see any spots where you need to detail a little bit more. Like I saw on the side of the fade, I was like, yeah, I probably need to go back in and detail just a tad bit more. So even though I am gonna go back in and detail, I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with a razor, because I'm not touching the line up anymore. Shit is already crispy. So only thing I'm gonna do is touch up anything with inside the fade and just make sure I'm flawless. So this is the final cut. If I say so myself, it's super dope, natural cut. I did go back in and just make sure I freehand some of the frizz, hit the fade with a little bit of shear work, and made sure this thing was VVS flawless. And this thing is just butter.